All right, so this is the third lecture for Chapter 9. We're starting with Punnett squares. Again, this is how we predict the outcome of crosses between two organisms. So the first thing that we need to know is that we need to assign symbols to represent the different variants or different alleles of a gene. And so generally the way that we're going to assign these symbols is that we're going to just assign them letters. So since we're going to be working, I'm going to keep playing with the giraffes with albinism. So we're going to just use A for playing with the giraffes. And then what we generally do is, just to make it easy, we're going to use an uppercase letter for the dominant allele, so make that one big, and then a lowercase letter for the recessive allele. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw ourselves a four-square box. So I'll give you a second to be able to go ahead and draw one of those in your notebook. While you do that, I'm actually going to change the screen a little bit so that we can fill out our Punnett square. All right. So, oh, wait. There we go. I will change the screen here in a second. So the way we're going to do this, so we're going to need to know what the genotypes are for our animals. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to cross the genotypes of just two of the giraffes that might have been out in that field. One we know was an albino. It had albinism, so that one is recessive. It's homozygous recessive. And so once you've got your Punnett square box, you're going to write the genotype across the top for one of the organisms. So since we know it's homozygous recessive, it would be little a, little a. And it doesn't matter which organism you write along which side. You just need to make sure they're both up on the box. So you can see we've got one A over top of one box, one A over top of the other. And let's go ahead and let's cross this with a homozygous dominant to start with. So we're going to put in big A and a big A. So along one side, then you'll put in the genotype for the other, in this case, giraffe. All right, now I'm going to change the screen so that I can type. So we've got our Punnett square set up. We've got our genotypes written on each side. And now we fill in the Punnett square. So the way that I learned how to do this is to just drop the letters either across or down in one direction to start. So I'm going to go across first. So you're going to put big A in this box and a big A in this box. Oop, sorry, I got to change the font color. Thought I had done that. Oop, and now there. Technology, right? Okay. So one big A. And then down in this box, I'm going to put in a big A. And in this box, we're going to put a big A, right? Because everybody in this row has a big A from this one, and everybody in this row has a big A from this one. Now we're going to do the same thing, just going down. So everybody in this row, or I'm sorry, in this column is going to get a little a. And everybody in this column is going to get a little a. And now we've finished our Punnett square. So we can see all of the possible offspring between a homozygous dominant and a homozygous recessive giraffe are going to be heterozygous. Big A, little a. All right. And if we take a look, I've got a completed version of home. Nope. Slideshow. A completed version of this square. There we go, with pictures and all. So we can see here's our albino homozygous one, and our father, who is homozygous dominant, And yes, all of the possible offspring are going to be heterozygous, big A, little a. So now what I'd like you to try is a Punnett square with two of the offspring right here. Now they wouldn't actually be the offspring, we wouldn't do that, but I'd like you to take two heterozygous giraffes and cross them. So pause the video, take a minute to do the Punnett square. So again, make your four square and fill it in, and then I will go through it just like I did with this one right here. All right. So I'm going to go in and take all of these out. Now, the other thing that people often ask me is, does it matter what order that these letters are typed in? So if I put them in the other way, if I dropped them down this way and then across this way, does that matter? No, because this is still heterozygous. It still means the same thing. You still have a big A and a little a. The thing is that we just generally type it big A, little a, just as, you know, a convention. That's how we normally write it. But if you write it in either direction, it's still going to work. All right. So if we switch these around, we now have two heterozygous giraffes, big A, little a, big A, little a. So again, same thing. This time I'll go the other way. I'll do the columns first. So big A, little a, little a. Now if we go across, big A, big A. So see, I'm going to switch it to the other side just because I like my big A's first. And then we're going to go this way, little a, little a. And we've got our two heterozygous giraffes crossed. And you can see we've got a combination now. We've got homozygous dominant, we've got two heterozygous, and we've got a homozygous recessive. And if we go in here and double check, yep, that is what we get. We have one dominant, homozygous dominant, two heterozygous, and one homozygous recessive. And we can actually then use these guys to determine percentages. So you can see they have these ones typed in as 3/4 pigmented, 1/4 albino. So you can convert that, 75% pigmented, 25% albino. Over here, it would be 100% pigmented because everybody's going to have pigments. You can also do what they've done here. So you've got 1/4 or 25% of the homozygous dominant. We've got 2/4 or 1/2, 50% heterozygous, and 1/4 or 25% homozygous recessive. All right, so this is one for you to try. So what is the possibility that a cross between the pigmented giraffe, homozygous dominant, and an albino giraffe, homozygous recessive, will yield an albino offspring? So that's for you to try. If you need the answer, you can always shoot me an email. And I've got one more for you. What is the phenotype and genotype or types of the offspring from this cross? And again, if you can't figure out the answer or you need to know what the correct answer is, you can shoot me an email or ask in office hours. All right, the other thing that I want to show you real quick is you can do this with Punnett squares, but you can also solve these with probabilities, because from the law of segregation, we know that any gamete produced by an individual who is heterozygous has a 50% probability of carrying the dominant allele and a 50% probability of carrying the recessive allele. Now I'm going to show you how to do it with probabilities. You do not have to use probabilities. If Punnett squares make sense to you, use Punnett squares. If probabilities make sense to you, use probabilities. Okay? So knowing that heterozygous individuals have 50% probability for the dominant and 50% probability for the recessive, and think about it for a second. If you're homozygous dominant, what's your probability of carrying the dominant allele? Right? 100%. And what's your probability if you're homozygous dominant of carrying the recessive allele? 0. Okay, so that's how we're going to work with these probabilities. So if a male is heterozygous for albinism and a female is homozygous for albinism, what is the probability that their child will be homozygous for albinism? So what we need to know is we want to know what the child is going to be homozygous. So which allele are they going to inherit from each parent? So we know we're looking for albinism. We're looking for little a. So mom, the female, can only give little a. So that's 100%. And what's the probability of them inheriting it from dad? 50%, because dad or the male only has one copy of that allele. And so you're going to set it up as a math problem. Let me get my face out of the way. So mom, the female, is 1% or 100% or 0.1 if we convert that to decimal. And then you multiply that to 0.5, 50% as a decimal, and multiply them together. And that gets you a 50% chance that the offspring will be an albino. Okay. If we do this for two heterozygous individuals, like here, so we've got big T, little t, big T, little t, and if we want to know what the chances are for little t, there's a 50% chance for the little t to be passed by each parent. So that's 50%, 0.5 times 0.5. That gets you 0.25 or a 25% chance that the child will be homozygous. So like I said, I just wanted to show you this because this is another way that you can do these sorts of problems. I just wanted to let you know, if you're following along with the textbook, we are not going to be looking at test crosses or pedigrees. I just want to show you a couple of cool single trait genes in humans. So this one's kind of neat. You can give it a try, and since you may be at home, you can give it a try with your family. So if you take and just without thinking about it, put your fingers together so they lock together. One of your thumbs will always show up on top. So if you look down, I can tell you, and I don't know if you can see, my left thumb always is on top. And that means that I have the dominant gene for this. In fact, most of my family has this gene because when we all come together, I've had us try it, we all put our left thumb on top. I think there's only one person in our family that puts their right thumb on top. The other cool thing, if you have your fingers together, or if you've taken them apart, go ahead and put them back together. And what I want you to do is take them and shift them around so your other thumb is on top and your fingers are interlocked the other way. And it'll feel weird. Again, this is genetic, so think about that. It's a genetic thing, and this is also why it can feel weird to shake hands with somebody. Now, don't shake hands now, but this is why it can feel weird to shake hands with someone with your kind of wrong hand. Another single gene trait is this, a widow's peak, and you should be able to see mine. Say woo. So I have a widow's peak. Again, this is a trait that's very common in my family. Most of my family members have it. It is a dominant gene, but I bet if we poll the class, most of you don't have one. This is an example of how dominant genes aren't always the most common gene. Dominant doesn't mean common. Dominant just means it masks recessive genes. All right, so we'll pick up with our next topic in our next video.